Welcome to the podcast Social Work Successes, which aims to shine a big spotlight on the brilliant work that social work professionals do with children and families every day, because this is just not celebrated enough. Practitioners will be sharing their stories, which will hopefully not only inspire others, but also provide some helpful learning in relation to factors that may have contributed to that success. You guys deserve far more recognition than this podcast can give, but thank you for listening and everything you do for the families you work with. I am joined today by Nanna, and I feel like I'm just going to let him introduce himself because he's building himself this famous reputation within the social work world, and I feel so honoured for you to be joining me today to talk about your success story. So if you just introduce yourself, say a little bit about your current role and maybe how long you've been in practice as well.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you. It's an honor to be on your platform. So, morning, everyone. So, my name is Nanna. I'm a social worker of 10 years. Probably most of you would know me from the social worker and the mentor podcast that I do with my brother, one of my best friends, Rob. Yeah, I've been qualified for 10 years. My current role is I'm a team manager for Looked After Children service. But in terms of overall what I do, I've worked in 3 local authorities. I'm also a practice educator for students, so bachelor's, masters, and step ups. I'm also a lecturer, so I lecture at 4 different universities in London. I also I'm a mentor, so I mentor a lot of students. I run a lot of support groups for students online. You guess you could say that I do quite a lot, and I'm doing a lot of work with BASWA, British Association of Social Work, and the unions. And you probably would have seen me in Parliament in December, where I was speaking about the working conditions for social work. So yeah, I do a whole range of things, both in work and outside of work.
Yeah, that's where I found you, and I thought I need to speak to this guy because he is obviously on a mission to get to Parliament and give them the reality of the picture of what is actually happening on the ground. So yeah, brilliant. How you manage to do all of those things and be a team manager is quite incredible. So yes, right, okay. So today then we're going to hear your success story. So do you want to just give a brief overview of the person who you're talking about and the kind of situation of how they came to be working within your team?
Yeah, so this, Alice, happened when actually I was in my first local authority. And actually it was a young person. He wasn't actually allocated to me at the time. He was allocated to another social worker. And I think that the issues was that the young person wasn't getting on with the social worker. But actually, before I get into it, what came out of it is that the young person felt that his social worker didn't have a lot of time for him. So the nature of the case actually was that the young person, he would have been 16, 17 17 at the time, was a looked after child, but he was heavily involved in county lines. What happened is that at the time when the case came to me, I was actually a deputy team manager, but I was also allocated to the young person, so I was actually doing dual roles. So essentially what happened is that the young person, we got a notification that the young person actually was in another part of the country, and he was found drug dealing. So it was a Thursday evening. I remember it very, very well. And what happened is that he was found in a part of the country, and he needed to be brought back home to his placement. So I was having a lot of discussions with my heads of service and my senior managers about how are we going to go and get him, how are we going to go and bring him back, and all those sorts of things. So what actually happened, Alice, is that I actually went to go and get him. So I worked all of Thursday into the early hours of Friday morning. So Friday morning around 2 o'clock in the morning, because throughout the night of the previous day, I was having a lot of discussions with the police because of where he was. We had to bring him like down to like the border, then for me to bring him back down to London. And
Mm.
also I was liaising with his placement as well. And to be honest with you, where his placement is in another part of London, I have a good relationship with the placement manager, a very, very good relationship with the manager. So what happened is that yeah, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I got up, I was working out through the night, and I drove to go and get the young person. And then we didn't bring him back to his placement until 6 o'clock in the morning. And the key thing, Alice, for me was about the relationship with the young person, and also being very much relatable to the young person. So I had discussions with that young person and his placement when we got him at 6 o'clock in the morning, speaking to him about the dangers of county lines. I mean, he was quite open with what he was doing. But one of the key things, Alice, he said to me is that he's felt that his social worker, prior to me being allocated, didn't care about him. And he said that I'm the first social worker he's worked with who's actually gone out of his way after hours, early hours in the morning, to go and get him and bring him back down to London, which is very, very powerful. Because if any of you watch my podcast, I talk a lot about social workers, and that the job role is it's not 36 hours, that we do maybe 45 plus hours a week. But it was the fact that actually I went above and beyond to go and get him from a trap house and bring him back safely to the UK, no, into England, sorry, was powerful for him. And that actually kept him in his placement. Obviously, unfortunately, after that, I couldn't hold his case because I was the team manager, but deputy team manager, sorry. But it's powerful with the fact that actually somebody's come to go and get him at late at night to go and bring him back. So essentially, the relationship was the positive impact, and also being able to, I think one thing about these job role roles that when you think of social work, you think of an office, it's very much a corporate setting. And sometimes I always say to social workers as well that you have to bring your personality into how you practice. So he was a young black male as well. And me being a young black male, being brought up from South London, being born in South London, that for him was quite key as well. He needed somebody to be able to relate to him. So relationship-based practice was very much key for me to getting this young person and bringing him back down to his placement.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously you're. I think the idea. I mean, from all of these podcasts that I've recorded, all of the episodes, the running theme of what has contributed to the success of that piece of work or a conversation, whatever it is deep rooted in relationships. It's absolutely a central part to achieving that success. And as you were talking, I was thinking, how did he react when did he know you were coming, or had you not? Was he resistant to coming back with you?
No, he wasn't, because as soon as Alice wanted to do, as soon as he saw me, he said, "Okay." Nana's like, he's on levels with me, he's on par with me. So he was okay, and we had lots of conversations. And his placement manager as well, who I actually still talk to and speak to till this day, like we know about the streets, we know about the young people. So it was like a very powerful conversation, and how I work as a social worker, I talk a lot of slang sometimes with the young people, because actually the young people, when you talk about what does a social worker look like, many of them feel that they haven't got social workers who understand their world. So for him, it was about having somebody there who understood his world, because sometimes when we work with young people and families, our jargon, our slogan, our acronyms, that can put families very much off. But when you strip that back and you speak the language, and you take the corporate language out of it, and you just be kind of real with them, that's how also sometimes you're able to break through, because that means the families actually know, okay, right, so you actually know what's actually going on. And I think that's actually very, very important. And I say social workers all the time that you each have your own skill set and way of practice. Yes, you work for a local authority, but if you have a certain way of practicing, bring it in. And I've always brought that in all the 10 years that I've been qualified. Even as a manager now, where I work, I go and see young people, and they're like, "What? You're the manager?" "Yeah, I'm the manager." "Oh, but you sound like us." "Yeah, come, let's talk." That
Mm.
breaks down a lot of barriers, Alice, to be honest with you. Do you know what I mean? And I think a lot of local authorities, in a way, into the practice, are very much stuck in an old way of working. A lot
Mm.
of, I know I'm probably going on a tangent, but a lot of the times, one of the barriers and things that I see, and it's probably a barrier in this case that I'm talking about, is that a lot of the time, a lot of cases, local authorities and how they operate very much on practice models and systems that are not current. It's not
Mm.
getting to the grassroots of being able to tackle what we're dealing with. And it's something that I've been very, very vocal about in terms of the podcast that I do with Robert, about trying to move away from this old school way of practice and working with our cases and making it very much current and authentic. Authenticity in social work is very, very important, because
Mm.
sometimes it's about you practicing differently from what everybody else is doing. It's not about local authorities all doing the same thing. Those are ongoing barriers. And there's a recent episode that's come out that local authorities at times, we're all doing the same thing. Nobody's doing anything organic. No one's doing anything. And these are barriers, Alice, to
Mm.
us working with families.
Yeah, and I think that, yeah, the language of barrier is, there's barriers there immediately from the beginning. So the job is not just the job. The job is also initially doing whatever you can to break down some of those barriers. And I can completely see how being relatable, being able to communicate on the same level as the person who you are wanting to engage with is absolutely key. And again, a theme that's come up a lot in various episodes is this idea of epistemic trust. So that somebody needs to know that you are like, understand what it's like to be them. Otherwise, they hear what you're saying, but they're not actually listening. So part of your practice is absolutely doing that relationship, breaking down those barriers, because you obviously need them to listen to what you've got to say, right?
That's
Because what
right.
you've got to
That's right.
say
Yeah.
is so important, whether it's
Yeah.
about their well-being, whether it's about the children's well-being. Like,
Yeah.
that relationship is so, so central. And it's great to hear that that's part of what you are teaching and talking about, because it is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so to kind of, I guess, what would you say were one of the biggest challenges in building a relationship with this young person? I'm guessing he in a residential placement?
Yeah, he was in a semi-independent placement. So the thing for me is that I think one of the barriers is that, well, actually, I had a good relationship with him. So, but I wasn't allocated him for long because of my
Mm.
job role. So I had him for about maybe 3 or 4 months, which was very, very short stint. So I think one of the barriers for me at the time was the fact that um I hadn't held this case long enough because of my role, because I was essentially at the time, I wasn't a senior social, I was a deputy team manager, but because of the nature of the case and a lot of the work I do, in terms of like my social work, I like working with young people. So I've worked with like the county lines, the gangs. That's why I took it on. So the barrier for me was my time or my position, because I couldn't do both roles. I can't case hold and also deputize within the team. That
And
was
that
the barrier
happens a
for
lot,
me.
doesn't it?
It
That
does.
again is
Yeah,
something that I see a lot, because of the gaps, and the gaps needing to be filled and people needing to take things on. But
that's
to
right.
be managing and also case holding, there's just you're then just your responsibility levels of understanding those families and children on an intimate level. The numbers are huge. There's just so many.
That's right, Alice. Yeah, and that is one of the barriers, and I think
Mm.
it happens a lot. Even in my current team at the moment, right now, I've had to still, even as a team manager, I've had to do a bit of that dual role, because obviously people have social have been leaving, and it's like you've got to fill the gap. And then it's like, families or a young person may get attached to you, but then it's like,
Mm.
oh, Nana, can you hold my case? And it's like, I can't, because I'm actually the team manager. I can't actually hold your case for you. So I think for me, with this young person, it was my time and my position,
Yeah.
which was a barrier. Because he just said, "Oh, Nana, can't you stay on the case?" Bro, I can't stay on the case, because I'm not. It has to go to a social worker. That was one of
Yeah.
the barriers for me.
Okay. And then, I mean, we've obviously touched on all of these, but three things that you think you could kind of pinpoint as being a success within that story that you told about this young person.
I think for me, one was actually bringing him back safely, absolutely, because young people often who are involved in county lines, you know, I always go and say this, that they are victims. And I know that people go and say that they make their own choices, but they're victims. You know, and we have to always remember that young people involved in county lines, they're victims, they're being exploited. So for me, the success was obviously bringing him back. The other success as well was being able for him to keep his placement. As well, that was another thing for me. And also being able to have start rebuilding the relationship with his family. Those for me were the three successes for this particular young person, you know, which I was very, very happy about. You know, those are the three things I would say I pinpoint for him. I mean, he'll be what, 18, 19 now? Yeah, he'll be 18, 19 now, yeah.
Okay. And the last question is, what do you love most about your job?
What I think for me, Alice, what I love about social work for me, and it's not about it's for me about trying to when it's hard, you see, because I love the job. I love doing groundwork with young people. I love networking. Yes, I love networking. I love working with young people and families. I love developing others. I think in my role right now as a team manager and things I'm doing with the podcast, that's the bit that I'm loving. The networking, the meeting different people, you know, but also meeting like young people as well, getting young people to actually see that, you know what, actually, okay, right, there's actually social workers who look like us, who sound like us. They're all right, you know. So that's one of a lot of things that I like about the job role. Is where I am right now is just developing others, the networking, meeting young people, and just trying to kind of make that change. Those are things that I do love about the job role.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for listening. This podcast is really in its infancy phase, so please do like, share, subscribe, tell your colleagues, tell your managers, tell anyone else that you think might benefit. Thank you.